coming. It's just an honor to have you all here to share some time with us. One of the things that I hear from a lot of people is the idea that they feel far removed from government and politics, and they don't have a say or control. And we do have the system of government where we send people to help make decisions on our behalf. And whether or not you decide to vote for Aditya, I think it's important that you get a chance to ask those questions. And this is our informal way of doing so. There's no need to donate, so there's no need to pay to play, but rather, as you'll hear from Aditya, rather than talking to a politician, you'll talk to a public servant. So with that, just say hello to Aditya.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody, for coming, including the next generation. I'm not the youngest. I'm not the youngest candidate in the room. We have somebody who's younger than I am. Future candidate for office, probably. Means a lot that you're here. I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. I think we've all kind of had at least a little bit of a conversation. My story, as many of you know, begins in Bombay, in India. I spent the first half of my childhood there. And, I think if I had to go back to kind of where the seed of this was really planted, I used to walk on my way to school when I was very young through a slum in Bombay, which in most developing countries is actually pretty common, right? Unlike here, where we have segregated pockets of poverty and then segregated pockets of wealthier areas, in most of the developing world, it's all kind of on top of each other. And so, although my family was pretty middle class, I could never really escape that there were a lot of people who were less fortunate than I was. And I would ask my mom, because a lot of these kids were unaccompanied by adults, where are their parents and who's looking after them? Sometimes they would play on barbed wire fences or kind of be in unsafe situations. And, my mom, just kind of like you would explain to any kid, would explain to me that not everybody is fortunate enough to have parents who can afford to be home and not be working all the time, so they have to pay their bills. And I think that always kind of stuck with me, and I was always affected, especially in a country like India, by the intensity of economic inequality and how, in our world, including in our country, talent, I believe, actually is pretty equally distributed. Opportunity is not. And so if you're lucky enough to be born into the right zip code, like I was, you have a shot. And if you're not, you really don't. And that's actually why I feel that I ever got this notion that public service could be a career, is because I always felt very lucky. And rather than feeling guilty about my good fortune, I thought, why not just be grateful? And why not put that energy into doing work that was helpful to other people? So as we were talking about, I joined the Red Cross in high school. Initially not for the best reason, just to put something on my college application. But I ended up really loving it. And I did that for 3 years. And I remember the moment that I thought it could really be a career was I won a Disneyland Resort scholarship for community service. And there was like 1,000 kids who applied in Orange County, and I was one of 10 kids who won it. And I didn't think I was gonna win. And so they had this whole ceremony, and they sort of celebrated you for doing service work. And that's when I thought, this could be not just a hobby, but actually a career where you could just help people, and that could be something that was actually rewarded by society. So I kept doing that and did 2,000 hours of pro bono work as an attorney, was in student government. The way we got the Chai with Pie idea was I was like Mr. Student Government in college, and senior year I was student body president. And so I'd have office hours every week for a couple hours, and it would just be called Chai with Pie. And my mom would give me these little tea packets that I would bring to college. I went to Claremont, not far from here. And I would just sit kind of in the common area, and people would come and sit down and kind of just tell me what was on their mind. And obviously it's a college campus, so it was like we need better parties and things like that. It wasn't like healthcare and immigration. But the idea is the same, which is that transparency, accountability, responsiveness in the people that we elect to office is really critical. The title is representative. That's your job. I mean, it's in the word. And so we may not agree on every issue. You might like some of the things I say and not others, but I'll always be accessible. And the reason we're having a face-to-face event like this is so that you have a chance to interact and kick the tires and see whether this is a person that you can support or not. And it's fine either way. I'm running against an incumbent representative who, since being in office, has hosted not one town hall. 0. she has never submitted herself to the scrutiny that I am right now. And that's what's wrong with our politics, in my view. So for me, the motivation comes from a desire to serve and to represent, not to be right all the time or to be loved all the time. Because in politics, no matter what you do, 50% of people hate you. And I learned that very quickly. And so the important thing is just to say, I'm here and I'm listening and I'm dynamic and I'll grow, which is also why I think we need younger people in politics. I'll just say a little bit about kind of where we find ourselves politically, and then I kind of want what's on your mind and would love to take questions. You know, we're in a tough spot as a country right now. I think we're in a really tough spot. And I think that if I had to pinpoint the core of the problem, it is that we elect far too many politicians and not enough public servants. What do I mean by that? We elect people who are good at winning elections, who are good at advancing their own career and winning the next election and the next election, and stay there well into their 80s, but are not actually doing things that improve people's lives. And so I think the first change that has to happen is we have to stop viewing politics as a career. Our founding fathers in the United States believed in this idea of the citizen legislator. You know, Madison would always say, or Hamilton would say, the job is to go to Washington and pass the laws, and then to leave, and then to go live under the laws that you have passed. It's not supposed to be a job that you have for life. It's not. And so the first thing, if you go to our website, is passing term limits, banning stock trading, getting money out of politics, getting corporate PACs out of politics, doing a lifetime ban on lobbying so that people who serve in Congress can't benefit from their service and profit off of it afterwards. You know, that revolving door between lobbyists and corporations in both parties is really a lot of what drives legislation in Congress. And so corruption, in my view, is the number one issue that we have to tackle first before we get to any of these other issues. It's really hard. The reason the face-to-face interactions are really important is because I think another big problem is our media environment, right? We only speak to, for the most part, people that we already agree with. The algorithm knows you so well that you're really only going to see the ads and the videos that you already want to see. And because a major source of revenue for these media companies, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or MSNBC or Fox or any of the channels, the major source of their revenue is advertising dollars from political campaigns. They're not going to talk about corruption because they have a vested interest to make sure that the money in politics keeps flowing. And so I think that's what we're up against. And before we get into any of the substantive issues, I think as a community, as a country, we have to commit to electing people who bring a service ethos and a service mindset to politics. And so my view is that, you know, my profession is that I'm an attorney. That's what I do. That's how I pay the rent. And then I want to be, you know, I want to serve in Congress to give back. Hey, thanks for coming. Perfect timing. And that I think is the ethos that we need in our members of Congress. I think after some of the corruption issues, what I think about a lot, particularly for my generation and the generation coming up afterwards, is economics. More under 35 Americans are living with their parents right now than at any time since the Great Depression. You know, that's crazy. It's because housing is unaffordable. Why is housing unaffordable? From my perspective, it's just because we don't have enough of it. Supply is constricted because we've put up artificial barriers and regulations to make it harder to build and to prevent us from having the stock of housing that we need. Homelessness, despite the fact that we're spending generational amounts on homelessness prevention, is worse than ever. And again, it's because if you're the CEO of a nonprofit getting paid 6 figures to end homelessness, guess what? You're never going to end homelessness because you have a vested interest in homelessness continuing. And that's kind of the problem we've created across, if you go issue by issue, immigration. Both parties are committed to not solving the immigration challenge because Democrats can call Republicans racist and Republicans can call Democrats lawless, and they both benefit. And so it's really not about Democrat versus Republican anymore, in my view, because we almost have a uniparty that is so focused on its own vested interest, that it's not really serving the people. To me, it's about politicians versus public servants. And so whether it's this campaign or something else, what I hope that folks take away from this event is when you get your ballot, look up the people that are on it, look at their websites, look at their literature, and try to ask yourself, is this person trying to make a difference, or are they trying to make a living? Because I think that's really the fault line now in American politics. And unfortunately, as optimistic as I am, most of the people that I interact with who are professionally in politics, they're there to make a living. And they treat America as a depreciating asset that they want to extract as much value from as possible before our inevitable decline. And unfortunately, I do feel that economically, it does feel like we're in decline. The American dream isn't as strong as it was when my family moved here, 24 years ago. I was able to get a good education, left for education, and then got a good paying job so I could come back to Orange County, and I could actually afford to live here. This is 5 years ago when I finished grad school. That's not true for a lot of my friends. And it's actually less and less true as time goes on. And so people who grow up in Orange County or grow up in Cerritos around here, it's harder and harder for younger people to afford to actually come back and live here. Things just like this don't happen anymore, right? That famous book, Bowling Alone, by Robert Putnam, is about basically the fact that community groups like this and like the one you'd run don't exist as much anymore. Everything is digital and online. And so people feel disconnected, even though in theory they're more connected than ever before. So I think what needs to happen is we need to demand transparency from our elected officials. We need to hold them accountable when they say one thing and do another. And more than anything, I think we have to hold the system accountable to results. And so what I'm committed to is delivering results over the things that I can actually control. The only thing I can really control as your representative is my own budget. Every member of Congress gets $1 million to spend however they would like. Most people put that money getting staffers in DC. I want to put 90% of it in the district to do concrete service for people here in Cerritos and Artesia and La Palma and Hawaiian Gardens and Brea where I live. Because that's something that I think is concrete and will actually improve people's lives. And I hope it goes well. Thanks for coming. You guys have questions or thoughts?